Look at this painting. We are in Rome. The year is 220 AD, and the ceiling of a lavish dining room has just opened up to drop a deluge of pink petals onto the empire's elite. But the petals kept falling. What started as an extravagant party trick turned into an execution. The floral avalanche was so heavy that several guests could not crawl out, and they slowly suffocated to death beneath the fragrant weight. The host of this deadly banquet was Elagabalus, Rome's teenage emperor. Ancient records tell us this young ruler served their guests camel feet, let tame lions loose in the dining halls, and rode backward through the streets in chariots. There is a massive catch to all of these wild stories. Every single surviving text describing these atrocities was written by older, deeply conservative politicians who personally despised the young emperor. We have to peel back the layers of this political propaganda. Once we look past the sensational rumors of the victors, we can start to figure out if the ruler dubbed Rome's worst emperor was actually the target of a calculated smear campaign. The true story begins in 218 AD, in the military camps of Syria. A powerful Roman matriarch named Julia Maesa had been exiled, and she used her immense family wealth to buy the loyalty of the Eastern legions and reclaim control of the empire. Maesa needed a figurehead. She brought forward her 14-year-old grandson, a high priest from Emesa, and spread a highly convenient rumor that the boy was the illegitimate son of a beloved former emperor. The army bought the lie and marched on Rome. This ancient coin shows exactly what arrived in the capital. The teenager brought a massive, uncarved black meteorite. It was called a beetle, and it housed the physical presence of the Syrian sun god Elagabalus. For centuries, Rome's religion operated under a strict hierarchy led by Jupiter. Elagabalus crushed that order, making a black rock the supreme deity. To consolidate power, Rome's oldest artifacts, the fire of Vesta and Sali shields, were locked inside the new god's temple. The Roman Senate, a body of wealthy men accustomed to ruling the world, suddenly found themselves forced to bow to a foreign rock. The emperor had publicly humiliated the most powerful men in the city. To understand why the establishment hated Elagabalus so deeply, we have to look at the Roman concept of virtus. This was a rigid, hyper-masculine code built on military strength, self-control, and stoicism. It was the only acceptable way for an emperor to behave. Elagabalus rejected this code completely. The young ruler refused the traditional wool toga, choosing instead vibrant Syrian silks. They wore heavy makeup, painted their eyes, and removed all body hair. This subversion carried over into the emperor's private life. Elagabalus took a former slave and charioteer named Heracles as a husband. When interacting with the court, the teenager demanded to be addressed not with standard imperial titles, but as a lady or a queen. According to the historian Cassius Dio, the emperor went even further. Elagabalus supposedly promised a vast fortune to any physician who could surgically construct a vagina in their body. The final religious boundary fell when Elagabalus married a Vestal virgin. By Roman law, these priestesses were sworn to strict celibacy, and the standard punishment for breaking that vow was to be buried alive. The Roman elite watched a teenager dismantle their religious hierarchy while openly rejecting their definitions of gender and class. To the old guard, this behavior was a fatal infection, threatening the patriarchal core of the state itself. Julia Maesa, the grandmother who orchestrated the original coup, realized her puppet had become a liability. To save her family's grip on power, she quietly shifted her political backing and military bribes towards Elagabalus's younger, much more compliant cousin. In the spring of 222 AD, the Praetorian Guard mutinied. They cornered the 18-year-old emperor and their mother in a latrine, where both were brutally slaughtered by the soldiers sworn to protect them. The state ordered a damnatio memoria, the total erasure of the emperor's existence. The mutilated bodies of Elagabalus and Julius Soaemius were dragged through the streets of Rome and dumped into the Tiber River. Murdering a sitting emperor requires serious justification. Writers connected to the political establishment, like Cassius Dio and Herodian, were tasked with explaining to the Roman public why the brutal assassination was necessary for the empire's survival. These historians took the teenager's actual gender nonconformity and weaponized it. They framed the emperor's identity as a grotesque madness, inflating cultural differences into absurd myths about smothering guests with rose petals to legitimize the two. The story of Elagabalus forces us to look carefully at who writes our histories. When all the surviving records are penned by the exact same political faction that ordered the execution, we have to ask how many other complex, marginalized identities have been permanently painted as monsters by the very people who murdered them.